that government regulation, government outreach, when it goes too far, it adds not only time and hassle, but it adds costs, compliance costs. It makes it so that you can only operate in certain ways. It limits the type of business you can or can't do. And a lot of these, small businesses or small family farms, whether they're Amish or not, are not able to sustain that kind of thing. The great big operations can do that. And they got the army of lobbyists and lawyers and accountants to help them do it too.
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to and watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. Well, a lot of changes taking place in the country. A lot of things, maybe good and bad. What's going to happen with the Trump tariffs? They're definitely coming. There's no question about it. And what effect will that have on the dollar, on trade, on inflation? And right now we have Brian Reisinger with us. Brian, great to talk to you. And hey, you're particularly concerned about the impact upon farming based on your book, Land Rich, Cash Poor, My Family's Hope and the Untold History of the Disappearing American Farmer. They seem to want to get rid of farmers in this country. The last election, the Amish have been under attack because they sell raw milk and the government keeps wanting to regulate their farms. And to a large extent, they voted to reject over-regulation because of their own financial interests. Their interests, same as farmers across the country, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you for having me. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the Amish farmers, particularly in Pennsylvania area, where there's a lot of them from a voting standpoint, in many ways, they're not unlike family farms all across the country. I mean, in some ways, there's certain technology they don't use that family farms like the one I grew up on do. But a lot of our small family farms are working in the same types of economics that those Amish farms are. And the reality is that government regulation, government outreach, when it goes too far, it adds not only time and hassle, but it adds costs, compliance costs. It makes it so that you can only operate in certain ways. It limits the type of business you can or can't do. And a lot of these, small businesses or small family farms, whether they're Amish or not, are not able to sustain that kind of thing. The great big operations can do that. And they got the army of lobbyists and lawyers and accountants to help them do it too, on top of having the money to do it. But it's a lot of times it's the small family farm, it's the Amish farmer, it's just like a small business, just like a Main Street business. They have a real challenge with those additional costs and when they're already operating on tight margins.
Hey, so what about it looks like a lot of small farmers getting into organic and healthy farming. And, I know we weren't really going to talk about this, but you get a higher margin there. And honestly, the food tastes better. Up until 10 years ago, I kind of rejected whole natural foods. Then I really researched it. These big factory farms have really been injurious to American health, haven't they? And global.
Yeah, we have an instance where people care more than ever about where their food comes from. And that's a good thing. That's a start because it creates an opportunity for something we haven't had in this country for a long time, which is new entrepreneurial opportunity for our farmers. So many of our family farms are locked into growing a certain type of crop because there's some level of income they can count on. There might be government support, guaranteeing more of that income, but it's not the kind of income they need. The problem isn't solved. Their costs are going up. And to your point, the margins are getting tighter, and they don't set those prices, their prices set by global and international, national commodity markets, et cetera. Sometimes at maybe a regional commodity market. And so, pursuing fresh, local food, specialty food markets, those are opportunities to set some prices that can, improve your margins a little bit. So it's a real opportunity. Here's the challenge to it is that we're just really beginning for that to be serious enough. What you're talking about and the way that you and others have become more attuned to that, it's the same for farm families like ours. The demand is really just beginning. We need a stronger local food movement. We need stronger local and regional economies. We need stronger specialty food markets for more farms to be able to shift to that entrepreneurial opportunity. So it's headed in a good direction, but we need that consumer demand to build more of that market viability for farmers so that more of those farmers can make that transition because they want to do it. They just want to work the land and grow something that people want to put in their bodies,
I really, when it comes to meat, beef and chicken, I want hormone-free, antibiotic-free. And when it comes to fish, I want wild caught. And it seems like with the current change of administration coming, RFK Jr. is going to head up the Health and Human Services Department. He's going to be the secretary there. We could be seeing the entire food debate change.
Yeah, it could be completely upended. And to your point of your earlier question, there's opportunity there for farmers. There's opportunity for farmers to be able to transition toward new types of crops and products that can supply more of that food. We can have new entrepreneurial opportunity for our farmers, and we can have more choices for an increasingly health and food conscious consumer public. And the thing that we need to do is figure out how do we do that and allow farms that are small businesses to make that transition. A lot of farms have a certain number of acres they have to put into that one crop they're growing to be able to make the money they need to. And those things are not what they need, but it's better than nothing. And in order to be able to experiment with new crops and transition from one crop to another crop and see if it works, there's risk to that. And there's also cost to that when they have tight margins. So we need to navigate this in a way that can allow our country's small businesses to pivot toward that new opportunity. And I think we can do that. But there's sort of always, there's a pattern as I was investigating why our farms have been disappearing for decades. And that is that hope and peril often go hand in hand, because change needs to occur. And there's some pain that comes with that, but there's also new upside. And that's what we need to figure out how to do with our American farmer and our food supply.
Yeah. And you just think if you could eat healthy when you're younger, a lot of the medical conditions you have when you get older, the chronic conditions wouldn't exist. And so to pay a little bit more, the thing that gets me though is a lot of this stuff is dictated by the government packaging and what you can say and what you can't. And, you go into Whole Foods and you think, oh, it's organic. It might be organic, but it's nutritionally sparse. You want nutritionally dense foods. And that's something that the average consumer, unless you've got this certain meter to measure the food, you can't know. So you want organic, but actually it could be worse for you.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And, the reality is that our government has not been able to navigate this the right way for us. A lot of times the government ends up being captured by certain types of industries, so there's a lot of change that need to happen. Now, here's the thing. You touched on cost and you're right about it. The traditional issue has been that our kind of conventional food system provides cheaper food and the local food movement provides maybe better but more expensive food. Here's the thing about that paradigm that's changing. Everybody knows food prices are through the roof. So our kind of conventional food system isn't necessarily doing what it used to do. It isn't necessarily providing affordable food anymore. In fact, it's not just inflation, the runaway inflation that we saw. There are other reasons that food has risen at a higher rate than inflation. And one of them has to do with the destruction of our family farms. And here's what I mean by that. The fewer small family farms that we have, that means that more of our food supply is in fewer hands, right? And you've got a really large integrated food system with very few paths, relatively speaking, for the food to go from the farm gate to the dinner table. It's, great big distribution centers, great big food processors, great big companies. They're all trying to keep up with the rest of the American economy. This is a systemic wide thing. But here's what happens. We saw this during COVID and we're seeing it during bird flu now. When, a farm or a distribution center or a processing center goes down for some reason in COVID because they're being shut down, with bird flu because they maybe have to slaughter a whole bunch of chickens because there's an infection, that affects our food supply in a huge way. So why are the price of eggs through the roof right now? It's because our supply chain is vulnerable. Why was food more expensive or, a lot of it you couldn't buy during COVID? Because our supply chain was disrupted. So the more farms we wipe out, the more we have this system that's capable of modern miracles, but is also deeply vulnerable to supply chain disruption, and the price goes through the roof and the availability goes into the basement.
So what about technology for small farmers? I mean, the ability to have a tractor that's geo-fenced and automated, all these other things, is that bringing a big change?
It is. And it's a change that can go either way. It can either help with the challenge of our disappearing American farmer and what it does to the cost and the health and the security of our food supply, or it can hurt. And what I mean by that is, one of the things I found in my book, Land Rich, Cash Poor, is that there were economic crises, there were government mistakes, and then there were technological issues. Those are the three big types of things that have been driving the disappearance of our farms. Technology has always been a double-edged sword. The innovation of technology is what allowed us to have more people taking on more acres and more animals with fewer people breaking their backs to do it. It's the reason that not everyone in this country has to grow their food. It's the reason that household budgets have a smaller share of their money going toward grocery stores. The flip side is most of our technology for the better part of all the past 50, 60 years has gone toward just finding ways that farms can get bigger, can get economic scale. That was important for a time to be able to accomplish that and, have, again, so that not everyone in this country has to grow their own food. But it went so far and we have so much technology that's been leaving behind other family farms. It didn't need to be that way. In about the 60s and the 70s, we hit that point where we needed to be making a change when you talk to economists. And what we should have been doing is pursuing what's called scale neutral technology. That's where you can pursue technology that can be affordable and practical, not only for large farms, but also for medium and small size farms. We missed that opportunity. So for the past, 50 some odd years, we've been marching toward more and more technology that frankly is leaving small farms behind, not letting them innovate. They could be perfectly efficient. They could be just as smart. They could be just as hardworking. In many cases, they're more hardworking, but they don't have the technological innovation opportunity that other operations do. So they go by the wayside. Right now with AI and with other types of technology, we have the opportunity to make the choice. Are we going to have that technology be scale neutral and bring more of our farms along, or are we going to have it leave more of our farms behind?
Yeah, I mean, I heard about the using drones to plant fields, and it sounds like this is going to be pretty amazing. Well, so the concept of the family farmer, is it going to continue on? The government loves concentration because then it's easier to regulate and easier to tax. They get one check instead of 10,000 checks and 10,000 tax returns. I mean, that's what they're about. But it looks like the people maybe are at the point where we're rebelling against this.
I think that's absolutely right. It's a choice that we're all going to make. Are we going to have more consumers moving in the direction of buying their food and other goods in this country in a way that supports American farmers? Are we going to continue on the current path? You're absolutely right. And there is something we can do about it. So the stats are kind of terrifying when you hear about them. There's also hope. We've lost 45,000 farms per year on average for the past century. That's 70% of our farms. We also have still nearly 2 million farms less in this country. And of those 2 million farms, 88% of them are small family farms. 96% of them are family operations, even if they're bigger. So you got nearly 2 million farm families operating small farms that this country has made it almost impossible economically to continue, who are still doing it. How are they doing it? They're working 2 to 3 jobs. You got guys working factory shifts or pouring concrete, and operating a farm. And what if we were to pursue the kinds of changes you and I are talking about? What if we were to have new entrepreneurial opportunity for our farms in this country? Imagine these nearly 2 million farm families that are still at it, even though it's impossible economically. Imagine what they could accomplish if they were able to have growing entrepreneurial ventures with their small businesses again. So we can turn this around. But if we don't, if we continue to lose farms at the rate of 45,000 a year on average, we're going to wipe out most of the rest of our family farms within a generation. That's the math, and it's
Yeah, and that would really be a shame, and it's unnecessary and should be avoided. Small is beautiful, as that book came out in the 80s. Anyway, Brian, we'll have a link in the show notes to this interview on financialsurvivalnetwork.com for your book. Is there a website we can find you at?
Yeah, absolutely. So people can find my book on Amazon or any other online retailer, Land Rich, Cash Poor. Also, my website is brian-reisinger.com. So Brian, BRIAN Reisinger, REISINGER.com. And, I just appreciate anybody who picks up the book. We talk about the hidden reasons our farms are disappearing. We'll leave that with my family's 4-generation story from the Depression to today. anybody who gets us talking about these issues is becoming part of the solution. So I appreciate it.
All right, love it. Hey, got a question for Brian or myself, shoot me an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. Brian, wish you the best of luck. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much, Kerry. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.